everyone. Some of you have been going through some really difficult, painful experiences, so I wanted to make a video telling you a lot of the things that I learned in therapy that took me years to figure out and learn, and that cost me money to figure out and learn. And I wanted to share it with you guys for free, and hopefully some of it will help you. So mostly what we're going to be talking about today is a module called emotional regulation. There are 4 main modules. This is one of them in a psychotherapeutic intervention called dialectical behavioral therapy, or DBT. It was developed by Dr. Marsha Linehan, and it is useful for people with any kind of depression, anxiety, whether you've been diagnosed with something, not diagnosed. It's for people with self-harm, cutting, any of that kind of stuff. I have found very, very useful for a number of years in my life. So I will also be sharing with you some information that I learned from 2 of my particularly most brilliant therapists, Dr. Lisa Galper and Dr. Chung Jung Moon, who is now doing his postgraduate work as a research fellow at Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine. I had the privilege of being a patient of Dr. Moon while he was working on his PhD at Arizona State University for like $35 a session. So there's 2 main components to building a life worth living. First of all, we have to find a way to manage or cope with the bad emotions and bad feelings that we have in life. Then we have to create, build in, and maximize the good emotions that we have in life. So to start with, though, we need to have certain beliefs about emotions. We need to understand certain things about the way feelings work before we can do either of those things. So the first thing we need to know is that everybody on the face of this planet will have bad and good emotions in their lives. So even the richest, most beautiful, well-accomplished person in the world will have moments of sadness, despair, loneliness, anger, frustration. And even the person who is starving in a developing nation will see a sunrise or something and occasionally feel moments of pleasure and happiness in their life. So there is no amount of achievement, there is no level you can get to in life, there's no a thing you can attain that will make it to where you never feel any sadness or pain again. That is simply impossible, because all feelings, good and bad, are a part of the human condition that cannot be changed. So you cannot prevent feelings. They are involuntary. You can control your thoughts and your actions, but you cannot control your actual feelings. Now, you can distract yourself from feelings a little bit. Of course, the more intense they are, the harder that is to do, but it can be done. And based on what other things that we're going to talk about later, you can actually decrease or increase the severity of your feelings, okay? But you can't actually control them. If you try to block your emotions and feelings, 1 or 2 things happens if you try to deny or avoid them. Sometimes they can actually get louder and more intense, and you will actually be in more pain. Or if you succeed in kind of blocking them a little bit, then you're in a state that's called repression. And in repression, there are consequences. Your feelings will come out sideways. When I use the air quotes, that doesn't mean it's not true. That means that these are terms and phrases frequently used in therapy. Okay, so your feelings will come out sideways, meaning that you will, if you try to repress them, you will start to have other symptoms, like you won't be able to sleep, or you'll get a lot of acne, or you may find yourself suddenly having migraines when you never had them before, something like that. So here's some good news, though. No feeling of any kind, good or bad, is capable of lasting forever. No matter how bad it is, even if the worst possible thing happens, and maybe it's happened to you, the actual intense, immediate want to throw up feeling that occurs at one time can only last for a maximum of 25 to 30 minutes. Okay? That is the worst possible case scenario. Now, good feelings also don't last forever. And this is one of the reasons that we see so many failed marriages. People get this rush of euphoria and they think it's going to last forever. But it can't, because no feelings, good or bad, can last forever. So, remember that feelings exist on a wave continuum, okay? So they come up, they increase in severity, they hit a peak, and then they start to go away, okay? So what that means is, even though the feeling will only last 25 to 30 minutes, it will come back. But in the case of extreme, terrible grief, what will happen is it will make that wave, it'll come up, it'll peak, you'll be miserable, then it'll start to go away, but it will come back. It will come up, but this time the peak is lower. And over the course of time, the peak of that wave will get lower and lower and lower. And that takes a lot of time, but you will find that it will never quite hit that extreme, terrible peak that it hit the very first time that you felt that extreme pain or grief. So you will feel the pain again, but it will never quite get to that point. Okay? So we don't want to hate our emotions. We don't want to hate even the bad ones, the sad, the painful, the terrifying, because emotions do serve a very important purpose. Emotions give us information, and they give other people information. And a lot of times it's very useful, okay? Like, let's say you're somewhere high up and you start to feel a fear of heights. Well, fear is an unpleasant thing to feel, but that fear may make you hang on tighter, and because you're hanging on tighter, it very well might save your life and prevent you from falling. Think about if you feel anger over what you consider to be an injustice to another person, and you feel like you need to step in, and you're in a position to step in and make sure that someone gets a fair shake. Well, it was unpleasant that you felt the anger, but the anger served an important, valuable purpose. And in the case of communicating to other people, think of a crying baby. That baby feels sadness. That baby cries and wails. Then the mother knows that the baby has needs that have to be met. Skin-to-skin contact, or feeding the baby, or whatever needs the baby has, they're being met because the baby felt that emotion and communicated that emotion to the mother. But here's where it gets tricky. Here's where most of our problems come from. We are all imperfect, okay? Our brains, scientists have said, are not operating to their full capacity, okay? So often the signals that we get from emotions, the information that they're designed to communicate to ourselves and to other people, is completely wrong. Completely wrong. We get it totally, totally wrong. For instance, some people feel with every fiber of their being that they are worthless. But we know that can't possibly be true, because all human beings are born from birth with an inherent, high, equal value that is not based on performance or anything like that. So feelings are not facts. Feelings are not facts. We have to learn to not always trust what they're telling us, because often they are telling something that is not true at all. And we are notoriously bad at interpreting the emotional signals from other people. How many times has someone been frustrated, stressed out, preoccupied, and we interpreted their emotion as being angry with us, or disliking us or distasteful towards us, when their emotional state, based on however they communicated it, we got the wrong idea, but it had absolutely nothing to do with us. So remember, feelings are not facts. That is very important for us to seek and find emotional stability. Okay, Another thing we need to know is that some people have greater sensitivity to feelings than others. Some people, so the same event could happen to two separate people. One person is sad. The other person is devastated, almost to the point of not wanting to live anymore, okay? Because that person has a greater sensitivity. They feel things more intensely. They feel that pain more intensely than the other person. There are a ton of different schools of thought about why this is the case. It could be genetics, it could be brain chemistry, it could be hormones, it could be the way they were raised, it could have to do with medications they're taking. There's all kinds of reasons, and sometimes medications and hormone therapy and things like that can be helpful, but for the purpose of this conversation, we're going to just all start wherever we are. If you're like me and you're a little more sensitive to painful emotions, you're going to have to work harder on the things that we're going to talk about than someone else. But the first therapist I ever had, very first therapist I ever had, in some ways I did not find him very helpful. This was 22 years ago. I was 18 years old. He did teach me one very, very, very valuable lesson that has stayed with me for 22 years. And that is, don't ever envy people who do not feel painful emotions as intensely as you do. Why? Because they also don't feel the positive, happy emotions as intensely as you do. So think about that. If you're someone who falls into that category, which you probably are if you're watching this. Okay, so let's talk about, before we really get into the two aspects, let's talk about the emotional experience as a whole, okay? So this is not just the feeling. There are a lot of other things going on when you're really, really miserable, when something has happened. First, there is the event that took place, okay? The event itself does not create the emotion. What creates the emotion you're feeling is your interpretation of the event. Now, you cannot probably control the event. You cannot control the emotion you feel, but you do have some control over how you interpret the event. But remember, our interpretations of events are easily flawed. Your interpretation might be right, but it might be wrong. Just keep that in mind, okay? Then we typically have painful bodily sensations when something really upsetting happens. You know, in extreme cases, you may throw up or feel like you're going to throw up. You may have butterflies in the stomach. Sometimes people will get nosebleeds if they're really, really upset. They might start to have like a migraine, any kind of physical sensations. So you've got this painful emotional burden, and then you have all these physical symptoms that you're trying to work through rationally all at the same time. And then what's even worse is we have what's called secondary emotions. Secondary emotions are when you judge yourself negatively for the original emotion that you felt. This sounds something like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I got angry over that. That was so stupid. What a dumb thing to get angry about. This is not a big deal. I can't believe I'm overreacting like this. What is the matter with me? I can't believe I started crying in front of people. That's so pathetic. I can't believe I'm like this. What is wrong with you? That kind of thing, okay? Those secondary emotions, they are based on judgments of the original emotion, and they are always, always flawed. So we're going to talk about how to try to prevent those from happening. Then we have urges to action. When you are in the thick of it and you are feeling absolutely horrible emotionally and you've got physical sensations going on, you're going to want to fix it. So you're going to have an urge to do or say something to somebody. Your urge might be to harm yourself. It might be to tell someone off. It might be to punch the wall. But in most cases, unless the urge is to protect yourself or someone else from harm, in most cases, the urge to action that you feel at that moment is flawed. Don't do it. Okay? Now, I'm not going to go into great detail about all the words you can use to describe your emotions. You all have great vocabulary. There is no need for me to do that. But it's helpful to consider all the factors we just talked about when you're in a really distressed state, because it will help you to step back a bit from your emotions and it will help you to act in the wisest possible way so that you can create the best possible outcome. Okay, so we said there's two components. We have to manage and cope with the bad feelings, and we have to create more good feelings and savor those. So how do we manage the bad feelings? We do that by decreasing negative emotional vulnerability. In other words, we take such good care of ourselves that we walk around life feeling so good to begin with that when something bad happens, it takes us down, but it doesn't destroy us. If we walk around life feeling really bad to begin with, and then something bad happens, it's going to take us out of the game. We're going to be devastated. We are not going to be able to handle it or cope. So I'm going to use something called the 5-part model. Now, I recreated this because I wanted to show you guys what a therapist told me, but I can't use her actual graphic without her permission, okay? So what we're talking about here is reparenting. Reparenting, okay? Reparenting is what is going to help you to treat yourself with the kindness, consideration, gentleness, and forethought that you would use on a tiny baby. That's what you're going to do with that. Okay, so there are basically 4 different ways that we can decrease the severity of our emotions when they hit us. And you can use the acronym TAPE, T-A-P-E. We can use our thoughts to decrease the severity, our actions to decrease the severity, our physical health, and our environment. Okay, so let's talk about our thoughts. How can we use our thoughts? How can we think in such a way that we are going to not make them worse and possibly help to make them better? First of all, don't avoid your feelings. Be mindful of them, observe them, and describe them. Don't avoid your feelings. Don't judge anything you're feeling. If you judge it, it doesn't make sense because feelings, the original feeling is totally out of your control. So don't judge it. That will reduce your secondary emotions, which are usually more painful. So automatically that will make whatever you're going through less difficult if you don't judge yourself for the way you originally felt, okay? Just accept that emotions, bad emotions, are what they are. Allow them to come and go on the wave continuum that they are. Cultivate acceptance and willingness to feel your feelings, or sit with your feelings, is what therapists often say. Why do we do this? Because we have no choice. We have no choice. We are humans. We will have feelings. So reeling against them, trying to pretend they're not there or make them not there, it only makes it worse. There's no point in doing that, okay? Sitting with your feelings will not kill you. You will find that when you mindfully observe them in a non-judgmental way, you will find that your feelings are not so catastrophic. Okay? Now, let's talk about ruminating. We don't want to cling to the feelings either, okay? We don't want to ruminate on them and rehearse the situation that caused the feeling over and over again in our brains, trying to make sense of it. The only sense there is to make is that you're a human and humans hurt sometimes. So it is what it is. Obviously, if you've lost someone in death, you can think about that person and talk about that person. We're talking about the event itself that was devastating to you. We don't want to ruminate and rehearse that over and over and over and over again in our heads. You will never be able to think yourself out of ever feeling hurt again. Every human being alive that continues to live will feel hurt and feel happiness again at some point, okay? Now, the other thing on the model that we want to talk about is actions. How can we use actions to decrease the intensity of unpleasant emotions? I'm going to be reading a lot from Dr. Linehan's book just because she says a lot of it way better than I could. One thing you might try doing, remember that your emotions are often sending you signals that are not true, okay? So one thing you might try doing is acting the opposite to the way your emotion makes you feel that you want to act. Okay, so we already talked about that initial urge to action is usually not right. Don't do it unless you're getting yourself or someone else out of danger. So what do you do? Okay, let's say you're afraid of something. Let's say you're afraid of public speaking, or you're afraid of flying in an airplane or something like that. There's a study called exposure therapy, and exposure therapy says that if you break it into a tiny bit, like a really small amount of public speaking, or a really short flight, or you just go to the airport a couple of times or something like that, and you very gradually expose yourself to what you're afraid of, that will help your fears to go away. Let's say you are ashamed or you feel like embarrassment or guilt over something that's not morally wrong. Okay, let's say you're embarrassed to be seen without makeup, but you find that it is interfering with your life. You can't go swimming with your friends, you can't go camping in case somebody sees you before you put your makeup on, things like that. So what do? Well, you let maybe one really close friend see you without some of your makeup. And then you let her see you without a little bit more of your makeup. And then you let another friend see you without a little bit more makeup. You slowly expose yourself to that embarrassment, and that will help the embarrassment to go away. You're challenging it. You're saying, is this really so bad? And you will see, in most cases, it is not, okay? Now, do not do anything that you believe is immoral, though. That is a quick way to destroy your self-respect, okay? So if you're feeling guilt or shame and you've actually done something wrong, then make amends, apologize, stop doing that thing, and do what you can to fix it, and then move on, of course. If you're sad or depressed, your inclination is to lay in your bed, sit in your house, do nothing, not interact with other people. Act the opposite of that. Dr. Galper said, depression is laughing at you. The more you isolate yourself and don't do anything and don't go out, the worse it's going to get. So get up, get out, go somewhere, do something, go to your mailbox, go around the block, get in your car, drive somewhere, walk in a store, do something. If you don't have the energy to brush your teeth, just get up and do something, anything, if you're depressed. Anger, if you're feeling anger, imagine saying nice things to the person you're angry at. That's not always easy. Argue from their point of view reasons that they may have done what they did. So that's that opposite acting again. And pray for good things to happen to the person that you're angry with. That's not always easy. Also, try to find pity for that person. Find something you know about them that will help you to approach them from a place of pity, okay? Almost everyone has something going on in their life that you can feel sorry for them about. This is not going to make you a doormat. This is just going to prevent you from acting in an angry, impulsive way and then having to deal with the consequences of your angry outburst. So this is giving you some space from that feeling so that you can make the best decision. Okay, so let's now talk about the other parts of the model, the adapted 5-part model that we talked about. Now, there's a whole nother study called cognitive behavioral therapy that goes into great detail about how to make sure that the way we're thinking does not make everything worse for us, and I strongly recommend learning about cognitive behavioral therapy. It is a wonderful therapeutic modality, but that is just too big for us to go into here. So we talked a little bit about thoughts. We talked a little bit about actions. Now let's talk about our physical health. physical health. And this is not about being like an Olympic athlete or anything. This is just simple things. Make sure you're getting enough sleep. If you're not, you're going to be more vulnerable to difficult emotions. Go to the doctor. Find out why you're not sleeping. Do whatever you have to do. Food. Make sure you're getting enough nutrients and vitamins for your body and brain to react normally, but not eating so much that you're feeling sick and having other symptoms and things like that. Comfort. Make sure your shoes are comfortable. Make sure your chair is comfortable. Make sure your clothes are comfortable. Make sure you're controlling the hot and cold temperature in your environment. Make yourself as comfortable as possible. Remember, reparenting like you would for a baby. Exercise. Make sure you're exercising enough to get that little burst of endorphins, maybe a little lifter's high or a little runner's high, but not so much that you're having really, really sore muscles or a knee injury or anything like that, okay? This is not going to make you lose weight exercise. This is exercise to manage and improve the state of our emotional health, okay? Now, would you ever go out of the house if you had a baby without something for that baby to eat? If you're hungry, you're going to manage whatever happens in a way less efficient manner. Always carry snacks. If you're cold all the time, make sure you always have a sweater or a jacket in your car. If you're very sensitive to crowds and loud noises and stuff, always carry earplugs with you. Take care of your own comfort level, okay? Let's talk now about the environment. That's the E in our 5-part model. Is your environment messy? If it is, that increases anxiety in some people. Just get up and straighten it up just a little bit, just to make it look a little bit nicer so that you can have emotional peace when you look around your space. Is it noisy? If it's really, really noisy, can you go to a quiet place if you would prefer to be around quiet things? If it's too quiet, can you add some ambient noise? Can you do soundproofing if you have a really noisy neighbor? Make the environment conducive to your own emotional health. Is it pretty? As you can tell, I personally am not emotionally calm in environments where I have to deal with my deep feelings if the walls are white or cream or any shade of white and cream. I have to have color on my walls, as you can see. Some people are very uncomfortable with bright colors on the wall. Whatever's pretty to you, make your environment reflect that. Is it very crowded? Do you need to carve out a little space for yourself? Is it cramped? Do you need to go to some place that has high ceilings? Or do you need to go out into the open air outside so that you can feel better and more comfortable? There is a study called Kaizen, Lean Kaizen, that I have heard a little bit about lately. And basically you go around your house and you fix what bugs you. Is there a drip on the sink that's driving you absolutely bonkers crazy? Get on YouTube. Read some books. Get the things you need. Learn how and fix it. It will make everything else that happens in life easier to tolerate. Okay, so we've talked about decreasing or managing, coping with negative feelings by decreasing our vulnerability to those. Now for the fun part. Let's talk about how to add or create more happy, positive feelings in our lives, okay? So there are a variety of ways that we can do that. I'm going to read. Dr. Linehan says, increase the number of events that prompt positive emotions such as love, joy, pride, self-confidence, and calm. Do pleasant things that are possible now. Increase daily positive experiences. So, positive things that are available to you now. Not when you get a boyfriend, when you get money, when you lose weight, when you get your house together. Do positive things now. Now, I'm going to show you a handout that Dr. Linehan has created. Now, Dr. Linehan in her book, she gives copyright permission. So anybody can copy her handouts If you want any of her other handouts, I can give them to you, and you can use them. You can make copies of them. You can do whatever you want to them. Okay, so Dr. Linehan has created Adult Pleasant Events Schedule. There are 176 things on this list that other people have compiled of things that some people might think are fun to do. You need to make your own list with your own name on it. Okay, so instead of Adult Pleasant Event Schedule, I have Amber's Pleasant Event Schedule, and you need one yourself. And you need to do as many things as possible on that list that makes you feel happy or joyful. This is not about being a party animal and having fun all the time and avoiding all your responsibilities. This is about finding a reason, reminding yourself of why you want to continue to walk around and exist on this planet. The more upsetting your situation is, the more desperate your situation is, the more of these pleasant events you have to do all the time. You have to jam-pack your life full of them. Absolutely full of them. As you become more emotionally healthy and stable, and your situation over time becomes a little bit easier to cope with, you will need fewer and fewer pleasant events to maintain emotional contentment. And you will be able to spend more time on other responsibilities. Okay? Okay. Dr. Linehan also says, make a list of positive events that you want in your life in the future. These are your goals. Work towards these goals. Even tiny little steps will help you. Okay? Another thing Dr. Linehan says to do is attend to relationships. Repair old relationships, make new relationships. Okay, so she says the secret here is not to put all your eggs in one basket. Don't let your entire happiness depend on one person or one group. For example, a romantic relationship or your family. Okay? Dr. Linehan, one of the other 4 modules of dialectical behavioral therapy is interpersonal effectiveness. So there's a whole big section about how to get along with people, how to preserve relationships, and how to create relationships. Okay. Now, another thing that we want to do to increase the positive, happy feelings in our life is we want to do a skill called savoring. Savoring is when you are mindful of positive events that occur. You focus your attention on positive events that happen, even very, very small ones. Very, very small ones. You saw a beautiful hummingbird. You saw a beautiful palm tree. You didn't get stopped by a police officer when you thought you would. You someone gave you some free oranges. Any little positive things. We want to savor them, focus on them as much as possible, okay? So maybe write about them in your journal. Tell someone about them. That helps to solidify it in your memory. Take photos of whatever positive things there are in your life. Post them online so other people can notice them and make comments on them, and you can remember them even more. And then refocus your mind on positive parts of events when your mind wanders to the negative. Do not destroy positive experiences by thinking about when it will end, thinking about whether you deserve it, or thinking about how much is now expected of you. We tend to do that. We destroy the positive. Excuse me, we do not want to do that, okay? Now, another aspect of creating positive feelings in our lives is building mastery. So, to build mastery, we do things that make us feel competent, self-confident, in control, and capable of mastering things. So, make a list of anything you've ever wanted to try and make a list of anything you've ever wanted to learn how to do in your entire life. Pick the easiest one and go to the library, get books, look at YouTube tutorials, collect the things you need, study, practice, learn, and do it. Okay? Dr. Linehan says building mastery usually requires doing something that is at least a little bit hard or challenging. Building mastery. It will greatly improve your life to build mastery. Learn how to do something that you think is cool. Okay? Now, to end this up, I want to read what Dr. Linehan says. Building a life worth living, one that is satisfying and one that brings happiness, is like saving pennies in a piggy bank. A person has to accumulate positives. So this will not happen overnight. This is going to take time. But if we try to do everything that we can to cope well with the painful emotions and create more positive emotions, we will find that life is worth living. So every single day, I probably cry a little bit. There's always, if I'm listening to the news or something, there's always something going on somewhere that does make me sad. I'm a very emotionally sensitive person. But every single day, or at least most days, I probably also cry from joy. Random acts of kindness, or beautiful things in nature, or babies grinning and smiling at me. Any kind of little good things. So many of them build up and accumulate that I am just overwhelmed by how beautiful my life is. And so you too can feel that way if you try to manage what's happening. I am not a doctor. This does not constitute medical advice in any way. This is just some of the stuff you learn in psychotherapy, and I know all of you cannot or do not want to avail yourself of psychotherapy, and I do understand that. So I hope this has been helpful to you, and I hope you all have a wonderful day. Take care. Bye.